The wall of Islam is now going to rise up, and all these governments are going to be swept away. And authentic governments representing the Muslim masses will now emerge. And therefore the Jews are going to have their throats cut. This is going to be the most dangerous moment in the entire life of the world of Jews. The media will portray it. If we don't do something, we will all be slaughtered by these Muslim fanatics. Yeah. I tell you, this will be drama worthy of Hollywood when it comes. Huh? They must be hating me now for revealing their secrets. It is in this scenario that Israel will say, we have to do something. If we just sit here and do nothing, the state of Israel will be destroyed and the Jews will all be slaughtered. What can we do? They call it a preemptive strike. A preemptive strike. But it won't be a preemptive strike. It will be the most dazzling display of the magnificent application of state-of-the-art military technology that'll leave even Uncle Sam in the backyard. A war like Uncle Sam has never seen and could never wage. That is what Israel is going to wage. Do they have the technology? I believe they have technology that even Uncle Sam doesn't have. It will be a lightning strike. Israel has to put on this magnificent display of military power and state-of-the-art technology beyond anything else that the world has ever known, in order for Israel to impress upon mankind the validity of its credentials that is now going to become the new ruling state in the world.
Egypt is mourning the victims of violence following a football game which saw more than 70 people killed in post-match violence. Fans rushed onto the field in the seaside city of Port Said after the home team beat Egypt's top club, setting off clashes and a major stampede. Cairo-based writer Belle True thinks the events could in some way be linked to the fallout from the revolution.
It's very difficult to work out exactly what happened, but essentially the security forces, who usually act as a barrier between the two sides, stepped aside and actually opened the gates to the pitch, which allowed the two fan clubs to come onto the pitch and basically fight each other. In addition, eyewitnesses are saying that the exits were blocked, so the Ahli fans, who were the ones targeted, actually couldn't escape, and therefore in the ensuing stampede, many lost their lives. There's also instances of knife wounds as well. We believe the Port Said fans, or whoever they were, may have been carrying knives as well. We've definitely seen an escalation in protesters in the last few months asking for the military regime to step down. We've seen an increased element of informal street violence against protesters. In fact, the National Council for Human Rights, which is a state-led organisation, published a report 2 weeks ago saying that the kidnapping that's been happening on the streets is a form of state intimidating the activists. I feel that this, the events that have happened in the football stadium may be an extension of this, in a form of discrediting the revolution.
There is growing talk about a military strike against Iran to stop it from developing a nuclear weapon. Some of it came from Israel's defense minister, and some of it came from U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta today. More about all of that now from National Security Correspondent David Martin at the Pentagon.
Defense Secretary Panetta believes there is strong likelihood Israel will strike Iran in April, May, or June. That, according to columnist David Ignatius, writing shortly after he completed a transatlantic flight with the Defense Secretary. Panetta today did not dispute it. As if to show Panetta has cause for concern, Israel's defense minister seemed to reject U.S. arguments economic sanctions need more time to work. Sprinkling his Hebrew with English, Ehud Barak said,
Later is too late.
As long ago as November, Barak said there were only 6 to 9 months left before Iran buries its nuclear facilities so deeply as to make them immune to attack. The U.S. is spending $80 million to upgrade its own 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb to go after more deeply buried targets. But when Joint Chiefs Chairman Martin Dempsey tried to convince Israeli leaders it's too soon for military force, he came away admitting he had not changed any minds. Israel recently canceled a missile defense exercise scheduled with the U.S. for the spring, a move some defense officials interpret as evidence Israel is focusing all its efforts on preparing for an attack. As Panetta explained in an interview with 60 Minutes, an Israeli strike would almost certainly have consequences for the U.S.
The United States could be targeted as a result of that. We would get blamed. Whether they like it or not, we would get blamed.
Nobody, including the Israelis, thinks a strike with all its unforeseen consequences is a good option. But if sanctions don't work and work soon, the Israelis could decide it's the only option.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Friday, February 3rd, 2012, and I'm Darko. This is part 2 of this news bulletin. Please check out my YouTube channel, ddarko2012, and ggnonline.com is my website. Alright, so those are the only options that Israel's going to be left with, if Iran doesn't comply with the sanctions. Well, it has nothing to do with sanctions. It has nothing to do with nuclear weapons or whatnot. It has to do with Iran actually being one of the last countries, countries that are in the way of the West, which is headed up by Israel. They have their own central bank, they have oil, and they have a loyal following in their country. And, if they go, then basically everything else will go along with that. So they are kind of like a buffer between that. So you just saw them with their propaganda and talking about it, and you can see just from the beginning to the end of how this is playing out. Ultimately, I didn't know this until I watched that video that included that sheik yesterday that a viewer sent to me. It's pretty interesting, though. I don't know if it's actually going to happen or if this is true, but he went into the whole thing about a world government, and he said it would be headed up by Israel, like the United States was headed up recently, just up until recently, and then the next one that will head it up will be Israel, and they actually start expanding outwards. And you think it was the Palestinians had it bad before, they're just going to go boom within a day. So okay, Britain returns to Somalia after more than 20 years of chaos. So this is big news. British Foreign Secretary William Hague, The Hague, is driven through the streets in his dorky little black helmet and his bulletproof vest and armored plate Humvee. Says here, made a surprise visit to Somalia. Well, it's a surprise because if everybody knew he was coming there, they would have assaulted that town and had him hanging in town square to resume Britain's diplomatic presence in Somalia after 2 decades of destruction, social upheaval, and a bloody civil war, which was what? Ooh, is actually worked into their favor right there. So, I mean, it wasn't that simple to go in there and be able to drive through there like that the way he's doing it. I mean, it took what? It took Kenyan forces to intervene. It took CIA drones and operatives in Somalia and flying out of Ethiopia for this to occur. But it was for a humanitarian mission, right? There was these poor Somali people, and they were starving, and they had famines and stuff like that, and Al-Shabaab was accepting aid. They accepted aid for everybody except for one organization. Guess who that was? The United Nations, the world government. That's who they didn't accept aid from. And that's what they focused on when they said they're not accepting aid. But what are they there for? Well, let's see. January 17th, 2012, Somalia oil exploration. Drilling begins in the Puntland. So oil exploration has begun in the arid northeast of Somalia, which has been racked by civil war for 2 decades. So the Canadian firm behind the project, Africa Oil Corp, sounds very African, right? It said its 2 wells are the first to be drilled there in 21 years. Remember, weather weapons. Now, I know it's a hot area, but still, famines. All they have to do is start cooking the ionosphere and create a famine, and boom, then you got a little strife. Just like in Europe, people aren't thinking about the euro going down, the euro collapse, and then this new currency merging everything together, right? They're not worried about that now. Now they're freezing. They're worried about being too cold. But look who else is looking for oil. Oh, yeah, Conquistador, Prince William, sent to the Falklands, February 3rd, 2012. That's right. Possibly the Antichrist, who knows? But Britain's Prince William has arrived in the Falkland Islands for a 6-week deployment. Almost sounds like it's a training mission. No, it's a hot mission with the Royal Air Force in a move Argentina has condemned as a provocation. London, it says here, which rejects Buenos Aires' claim over the craggy, windswept islands, is sending one of its most sophisticated warships to the Falklands. It basically goes on here, and it says that he says Prince William, it's routine for Prince William to spend time in the Falklands at this stage of his career. So, and there's the Falklands War in 1982. So this is all over oil again. So this is, you see, almost like, I've mentioned this before, but 2012 is, you got to check out Time Wave Zero. I think that's the name of the title, by Terence McKenna. And he talks about how 2012 is very interesting because everything, you'll see the rise and fall of old empires within a day, within minutes. And every day that we experience today, this year, is like 20 years. I think it's more like 20,000 years, but it's like 20 years in one day. So you'll see all this crazy stuff going on, like Turkey trying to assert itself as the big Ottoman Empire again. It's just all replaying. African Union embraces generous Chinese financing, weakened by chronic infighting and the demise of its longtime financier, Gaddafi. The African Union is turning instead to the embrace of its richest new ally, China, which is interesting because Gaddafi tried introducing a gold-backed currency, the dinar, which would have helped the African Union, but they couldn't work together and get that done. And then he ended up getting sodomized by his own people and taken out by a color revolution, that foreign forces. And that's what's coming to Syria and Iran. U.S. intelligence, India may be drawn into limited war with China, so United States will replace Russia as India's largest source of arms in 2013. Now, let's not forget about Israel, who is supplying arms right now to Saudi Arabia, which is in the United States' back pocket. The Obama regime is quietly selling arms to Bahrain despite continuing human rights abuses. So it's all about human rights. Remember, just like Somalia, just like Syria. China's sanctions against Philippines urge China should impose sanctions against the Philippines after the latter offered to allow more U.S. troops on its soil, state media said on Sunday, amid growing tensions over the disputed waters in the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea. Then we have this: Venezuela completes gold repatriation. And it says here, 6 months after President Chavez announced the repatriation of Venezuela's gold reserves, kept abroad, last shipment of 23 tons of gold arrived in the capital on Monday. There's some good propaganda for you. Iran-Venezuela links examined amid fresh calls for terror-sponsored designation. That's right, an axis of evil. U.S. sellouts will turn a spotlight Thursday, talking about politicians, on deepening links between Iran and the leftist regimes in Latin America at a meeting that will likely hear fresh calls for the regime to designate Venezuela as a state sponsor of terrorism. Is it because of that they're a big threat? No, I don't think Venezuela is going to be storming the shores of the United States or exporting terror cells, sleeper cells. And honestly, I don't think that Iran could even be a humongous threat to the United States militarily. But look at Venezuela announces irrevocable withdrawal from World Bank's arbitration body. That's right. The move has been taken on the grounds of defending national sovereignty and, quote, to protect the rights of the Venezuelan people to decide the strategic orientation of the social and economic life of the U.S. to use NATO radar in Turkey to send data to Israel. And remember, Israel is the one that collects all the information that's stored as far as spying on. And despite Washington's sanctions against Tehran, no backtracking for Pakistan on Iran gas pipe. Militants blow up gas pipeline and conflict hit southwest Pakistan. A big deal in Pakistan. They've been pro-West for the most part, but they look like they're starting to become more independent. This is GG.